Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to cut open one of the eggs to make it into a vase. At this point you should have 2 eggs. What I usually do is once I have 2 eggs, I decide which one is more looking like an egg form, is more conducive to the form of an egg. In the case of my 2 that I have in front of me, I'm going to choose this one to be an egg. Now once I do decide that, this is in the leather hard stage, I'm going to have to make an air hole so that steam could escape and it won't explode in the firing process. How I do this is I use my fettling knife, I puncture it all the way through, and I give it a little twist. That way I know it's open enough and it won't shrink closed. So I've got my air hole. The next thing I could do, and what everyone should do, is carve their initials and the class that they're in underneath. Okay, so the egg, now that it's got an air hole, my initials, I want to make sure that it doesn't leave the leather hard stage. I'm going to put it back in a bag. Okay, so now onto the egg that I decided to cut open as a vase. What I want to do is make sure that it stays looking like a vase. If I cut an opening down here, it's going to look like a cup. Not that, we're not going to make cups eventually. For this project, I want to make sure that my opening stays small, about the size of a quarter, maybe a little less. And I want to make sure it's at the very top. So I take my fettling knife and cut a round circle. It does not have to be perfect. Matter of fact, the more imperfect that it is, the better it is. So I just cut open a very small opening. At this point now, I do have some thick edges in here that I want to make thin. I want to thin this out so that it stretches it as a neck, but it also looks more refined. That's in the craftsmanship. So I'm going to take my water and add a little water with my paintbrush just to all the edges. I want to just pull this up straight without making it wider. I want to make a little bit of a neck. And this one is actually on a bit of a slant. So I'm opening it up just a little bit while keeping it narrow so that it doesn't open up like a cup and it stays looking like a vase. So I'm going to have an in at the base, a tapered edge, like you were doing with your pinch pots, and I could bring that back with my paddle. And I'm thinning out and refining the top, making it have a little bit of a neck for the vase, which is what it's called at this point here, is the neck. A little bit more water. Okay, so now that I've opened it up, I can actually see inside and I can see my seam in there. I know it's difficult to see in the video, but once I open it up, I can reach inside with my green modeling tool, put it in my hand so that my hand forms that natural curve, and blend the inside seam. It is very important that I do this while it's in my hand so that my hand helps keep the shape of the vase. And it might actually puff out the body just a little bit, which I actually like that because it makes the ends seem even that much more tapered. So the body puffs out a little bit, my end stays tapered, and now I'm getting these little cracks at the top. This, I think, adds character because we are creating not a symmetrical top, but an asymmetrical, organic top. So I'm just going to smooth that out because once this is fired, it's going to get sharp. So I want to make sure that does not get sharp. So I'm just going to put a little water. And now that I've blended the inside, I can smooth the rim. Again, letting it be a little up and down, letting it be a little irregular. Just making sure nothing is sharp. Okay, so now it's opened. I obviously, for this, no air hole. This is going to be an opening, an open form. We have a closed form, and now I don't want this to dry either because 2 things are going to happen. I'm going to have my egg that I'm going to carve, and I'm going to have my vase that I'm going to add to. So we're doing a carving where we're subtracting clay and we're adding on to our vase by taking little scrap pieces of clay. You could even use the scraps that came off from the top from cutting it open. And what we're learning to do in this situation is how to slip and score very small attachments, very small appendages to a form. In this case, our vase. So with my egg, I want to make the decision of, do I want to do an organic design all over? Do I want to do something maybe geometric using shapes like I did with my pinch pop and create an all over design? With the egg, the entire egg is going to be covered in whatever design you decide to do. So for this one, I decided to do something very organic using leaf motifs, using scroll designs, and all over I carved. Using this graffito tool or even a pencil will work. I often like carving with a pencil too because the pencil gives a nice wide opening as well. So I just want to make sure that when I do carve that the openings are wide enough, because we're going to be doing a technique in glazing called Inlay, and we're going to be pushing clay into the carving. And in order to be able to see that, the carving has to be deep enough to accept the glazes. So this inlay is showing off my whole design. So I want to make sure that that happens. So my egg is going to be carved. When I know that I'm 100% done carving it, then I can let it get to the bone dry stage. So I'm just going to make sure that I do an all over design, that the egg is covered in my motif of leaves and scrolls. Let me just take off those little crunchies. Waiting for your work to be in the leather hard stage is pretty important, because if you try to carve too soon, especially with the egg, it's going to you're going to end up possibly misshaping it, and you don't want to do that. Along with, it's a little bit more challenging to carve into clay that's too wet. It tends to get mushy. Okay, so I'm going to go along and just kind of add to my leaves to make it more interesting. I want to make sure that when I look all over the egg that I do see my design, so it's continuing. And that's it. I do like sometimes doing geometric designs as well. In this case, I took 3 simple shapes, and the rule of 3 is that it's more dynamic. So I want to make sure that my shapes are going to show with the inlay, and I'm just going to go ahead and carve so that I'm covering the surface of the egg in a planned way, in an organized design. So I'm repeating shapes to create a pattern and a design all over. So that's what you want to continue, and I can continue going with my circles above my rectangles and finish my egg. So for the vase, I want to decide where I want the focal point to be on the vase. Where do I want to emphasize this add-on of shapes? So I like the way the vase kind of has an uphill look to the opening. So I'm going to use this as my focal point and slip and score some small scraps of clay on here. And I want to use at least 5 pieces. And so that's what you're going to do. I've got my scrap clay here. And I can just start messing around and add a little water to make it easier to form. And create a little ball of clay. So it's very small. It's like I'm making a bead. Put this in here and make a bead. And it's actually kind of teardrop shape, but I like that. So what do I need to do? I need to make sure I take the serrated part of my green tool and I make score marks. So I'm scoring it. Okay, I'm going to take my little oval shaped bead and I'm going to score that. I want to make sure that I wet it to create a little slurry and attach it with water. This is very important. If you don't score and slip your attachment, it's going to want to fall off. When it dries, it might seem like at first that it's adhering, but when it dries, it's going to want to escape. So I'm going to make sure that I not only push it in, but I also blend it in. So I can just keep adding water, and I could reshape it. I like to see sometimes, in this part especially, how abstract shapes they make fun patterns. So I'm going to do this 5 times, and the next one I do, I could just use my fingers and manipulate a little block of clay. So I'm just making a little square, and I can see what happens when I add this to my vase. So I've got a little square. I'm going to decide, all right, I'm going to put this guy here, so I'm going to score. Score my little block. Add some water. And then attach it with a good push. Okay, so now I've got this square. I don't want it to stay like that, just so kind of sticking out. Almost looks like an eye, square eye. I'm going to give it a push. I'm going to start smoothing it out a little bit. This one I'll change the shape up a little bit. I'm kind of having fun with an abstract design here. Smoothing things out. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't mind at all if you do more than 5 attachments, but I think 5 is a good odd number. It definitely gives you enough opportunities to practice scoring and slipping on small pieces of clay onto your form. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put this one over here. Stir that up. Add a little water. Take that and put it down. Okay, so this one, I'm going to elongate this one too. So all I'm doing is using my hands, my fingers, to manipulate the form. So I took a square, and I just pulled it down, and it looks very similar to the bee that I did the first time. I feel like it is starting to look like an eye. All right, so I've got a couple more shapes to put on, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But in the meantime, too, I want to make sure that the inside is blended, because we can see the inside. I will be checking to make sure that you blended in the seam, that the vase stayed tapered. You can always bring that back if I felt like the vase was getting a little too wide. I can just take my paddle and shape it out. So I've got this nice in, out, in again design to make my little bud vase. Now I have a couple of examples here. I did one with an abstract. I did 6 editions on here, and it kind of gives the look of an abstract plant or foliage, and I kind of like that. But again, that's my style. In showing that you can do something actually realistic. If you actually wanted to add a flower that looks like a flower, you certainly could do that, to include leaves, or if you wanted to do something that represented actual leaves without the flower, you can certainly do that. If you ever have any questions about, the design ideas, you can let me know and I can help you. This is our finished model that I've been showing all along. What I'm hoping is that you get to experience with your glaze choices how the glaze flows over something that interrupts the shape, the form. I have added texture on this one too. If you want to add texture to yours, just let me know, or make a plan for it. But what I definitely want you to see is the raised areas have it interrupt the flow of the glaze. And also you're learning about design. So here's a finished one. You can see every time I do a vase, it comes out just a little bit different in the tops. And that's the fun of it. That's the charm of things being handmade. And this is the egg with the inlay and all the texture. So that's how you open up the vase. Thank you.